Yep.
Okay. So yes, my name is Lizzie. I am the Urban Forestry Program Manager for the Western Reserve Land Conservancy. And our urban forestry program is called Reforest Our City. So Reforest Our City is a movement to grow tree canopy in the city of Cleveland for the benefit of all Clevelanders, which we do through three main branches. Planting, either by giving trees to people so that they can plant them in their yards, and hosting plantings in neighborhoods and on other pieces of property like schools. Stewardship, which is making sure that we are watering trees under our maintenance, providing information to people who are taking trees to their home so that they can water and maintain them, providing pruning in the first couple of years, and also tracking to make sure that trees are staying alive, so that we can adjust future plans based on what we see. So if some trees are not doing well in Cleveland, we don't want to keep planting them. We want to plant trees that will stay alive. And also building community by hosting tree steward trainings where members of the community can learn more about trees and urban forestry, hosting volunteer opportunities, and building partnerships with groups like community development corporations, large landowners that have space to plant trees, and other neighborhood institutions. So before we get too deep into this, just go ahead and put your idea of what you think tree canopy is in the chat. Can we see the chat if it's on a screen share?
Yeah, people should be able to bring it up.
Oops. Sorry. Okay. I can't see the chat, which might be where I am.
I can read any submissions.
Yes, please do.
So I'm waiting for someone to type something, but does anybody in the room have an answer for this?
It's okay if you don't.
The space that is overhead covered by trees. And then someone else said the roof of trees.
Yes, I love the term the roof of trees, but yes, canopy and canopy cover means essentially if you are like a bird looking down, what is covered by trees. So why do we want urban trees and why do we want tree canopy? Trees make cities livable for everybody who lives here. They are some of the largest pieces of green infrastructure in cities. So green infrastructure are things like bioswales, trees, rain gardens, basically things that we need to keep cities functioning that are not just built out of man-made materials. Trees do a ton of environmental work in cities, and they are some of the largest pieces of that green infrastructure. Their benefits can be measured and valued over time. And we know that large mature trees provide more value than young trees, and they also provide more canopy. So on the tree below, you can see some of the benefits of trees. Certainly not all of them. I think the list is never ending. But why do we want to focus on canopy cover, and what are some of the comparable canopy covers? So if you have a guess for what the canopy cover of New York is, go ahead and put it in the chat.
All right. Stephanie says 12. Anybody else?
Any other guesses?
We're talking about New York right now?
Yes. Canopy cover by percentage out of 100. We can move on.
Elise says 8. I will also throw in a guess, and I would wager maybe, I'm going to go higher and say maybe 18%.
These are really good guesses. I'm going to go to the next slide and we'll see. So New York actually has a canopy cover of 21%, which is pretty impressive given the amount of urbanization that is there, right? They also have New York has an incredible and a very expansive park system that includes Central Park, which provides a lot of tree canopy. All right, so what about Pittsburgh? Pittsburgh is more, in terms of demographics and regional, more similar to Cleveland.
So Stephanie says 25%. Elise says 30. I'm going to say 28.
Oh, good guesses. Pittsburgh has 42%.
Woo.
Pittsburgh is a very well-treed city. They have a very strong city urban forestry program, very strong parks conservancy, and strong nonprofit presence. All right, so we'll bring it into our home state. What about Akron? Smaller city, but subject to some of the same economic conditions that Cleveland has been subject to over the last couple of decades. Got 20%.
Stephanie says 20. I'll guess maybe 32%. Elise says 40.
Right, so Akron is at 37, which is good. We got some close guesses on that one. And what about Cincinnati? Oh, sorry, I gave it away. But if you didn't see, you can put your guesses in. All right, so we may have all seen the screen. Yep, Cincinnati, 38% tree canopy cover. The ideal canopy cover for a city is about 40%. That is where we really start to see good continuous benefits, where the cost of maintaining the trees is not outdone by the value that the trees are giving to us. So now we'll look at Cleveland. We have a county study that measured the canopy of the whole county and then broke it down by municipality. So what is your guess? You could put in your guess for Cleveland and also your guess for Cuyahoga County.
So Elise says 30 for Cleveland. Stephanie says 15 for Cleveland. And then Stephanie says 20% for Cuyahoga.
All right. So Cleveland's canopy cover is 18% right now. That is down from the first canopy estimate, first canopy study, which was done in 2013, in which our canopy was 19.4%. The canopy study that came out in late 2019 had us down to 18%. And Cuyahoga County is 37% canopy coverage. So we are not doing well in terms of canopy cover in the city of Cleveland. The county is doing much better, but then again, too, that there are municipalities in the county that have canopy cover that's lower than Cleveland's, and there are municipalities that have canopy cover that is much higher. So it kind of averages out. We have a lot of room to do better. The canopy potential for the city of Cleveland is 76%. That means if every single possible not a permeable space, so not impermeable, but permeable space that's not water or not an airfield or not something that doesn't need to have, that can't have trees on it, were planted, we could have a canopy cover of 76%. A better goal is to get the canopy to 20% and then to 30% and then to 40% to see that really healthy canopy level coverage going out. And of course, the canopy is not evenly distributed. We have some neighborhoods that have really nice park systems and really good tree cover, and some neighborhoods that do not, or some neighborhoods that do have trees, but they're not well maintained. They're invasive species. They are providing some benefit, but not as much benefit as if they were intentionally planted, right tree, right space, maintained by the city. So there, in terms of the spaces for Cleveland's trees where they could go in the parks, both city and metro parks, such as Wade Oval and University Circle. We have plenty of natural areas where we see good tree canopy cover, like the Lakefront Nature Preserve. Our cemeteries are actually really excellent places to see both good canopy cover and very interesting tree species. Cemeteries were the original park in American cities. Public property, such as tree lawns, and private property, such as backyards, are kind of the top contenders for places to plant trees. So where do you expect to see trees, as in like which neighborhoods, and where do you expect to not see trees?
And then Lizzie, are you still not able to see the chat, or?
I figured it out. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right, I'll stop reading
Okay.
it to you then.
And it's okay if you just want to think about this. We could talk about it at the end as well. Yeah, yards. The interesting thing I think about tree lawns is that it's such a regional term for us. Most other places in the nation don't refer to the strip between the sidewalk and the curb as a tree lawn. They call it a parking strip or the right of way. And I think that because we call it the tree lawn, we should see trees in every tree lawn.
I completely agree with that.
But it's a good term because it makes people think that there should be a tree there. And then how do you feel when there are no trees in a neighborhood? Sad. I also feel sad. Yeah, there's no shade in trees with no neighborhoods. They're not comfortable to walk through. They're not comfortable to bike through. They're not comfortable to shop in. They don't look as nice. All right, I'll move on to the next slide. So this is a map of canopy cover by neighborhood. Some neighborhoods have really, really high tree canopy. Cam's Corners and West Park enjoy canopy of 34%, which is pretty close to the city average. And then we have neighborhoods like Central Kinsman, where canopy is 13%. Cadell, this map is old, so this map has Cadell at 16%. I believe it has gone down since the canopy, since this map was created after the first canopy study. Detroit Shoreway, we're at 19%. We're just not doing well equitably across the city. So what happens when trees are distributed unevenly across the city? We see higher rates of asthma in neighborhoods with lower canopy. We see an increased urban heat island effect in neighborhoods with lower canopy, which is where the neighborhoods feel a lot warmer than their surrounding green spaces. We have increased flash flood risk, which we saw over Labor Day weekend when we had 4 inches of rain. There's a higher risk to pedestrians because trees calm streets, and actually drivers tend to drive more slowly on well-treed streets because there's a visual perception that the street is more narrow. And neighborhoods in low canopy areas tend to have higher energy bills for the homeowners. And it is not intentional, or is not accidental, that certain neighborhoods have low tree canopy. This is the redlining map of Cleveland. Redlining was a discriminatory practice where certain neighborhoods were literally covered in red ink by bankers and realtors and city planners and listed as undesirable, and thus homes were only sold to Black and minority homeowners. This redlining map and the tree canopy cover map match up pretty well. So in redline neighborhoods, we tend to see much smaller yards, much smaller tree lawns. There's not as much consideration for green space or trees. Parks are smaller and not as walkable. So it is by design that some neighborhoods are lower canopy. And we'll talk about trees and urban heat now. The urban heat island effect has a ripple effect on many other things. It has a disproportionate health impact on Black, Indigenous, people of color, especially senior citizens. Heat-related illness is one of the fastest rising causes of death in America as our summers get warmer and also as our cities lose tree canopy. It leads to an increased energy demand, which makes housing costs more expensive. It impairs water quality in Lake Erie by the toxic algal blooms tend to happen in warmer water and in warmer summers. A tree canopy of 40% can cool a neighborhood to such a degree that the heat island is completely negated. So in Cam's Corners and West Park, where the tree canopy is pretty close to 40%, the urban heat island effect is not as noticeable as it is in Central Kinsman, where tree canopy is under 15%. So things like parks and green spaces can provide a temporary respite and a temporary cooling place, but the most meaningful change comes from contiguous canopy coverage, which means that there's full canopy over the sidewalks, there's trees in yards, and that this canopy, if you were to look down on a neighborhood where there was a big road and then sidewalks and then houses and then a park, that the canopy would be continuous, that whole in that whole area, continuous 40%. So this map shows where heat stress is the worst in the city of Cleveland. And again, that also matches up pretty well to the redlining map. So then trees and breathing, the low canopy can cause very bad health outcomes in low canopy neighborhoods. Tree cover correlates to asthma rates. It correlates to particulate pollution and it correlates to chemical pollution. So in low canopy cover neighborhoods, we see higher asthma rates. We see more particulate pollution, which comes from things like brake pads or pieces of construction dust. Trees can actually intercept that by catching it on their leaves, and they can also uptake some of those particulates from the air and from the soil. We see chemical pollution from diesel engines and car engines, lawnmower engines, and trees can also sequester those chemical pollutants to the point where you can see a block by block difference in sulfates and nitrates in the air from a street that is fully treed to a street that has no trees. There are studies that show that even on that small scale level, there is a difference in the presence of chemical pollution. So with all of this in mind, when we are trying to grow tree canopy, we have to center equity first and foremost, because we know that people are being disproportionately impacted because they're living in low canopy neighborhoods. It's having an impact on their property value and on their health and on general quality of life. So we can't just focus our planting in neighborhoods that already have trees. We have to plant in neighborhoods that are low canopy and where they don't have trees. So this is true for both Western Reserve Land Conservancy and I think community foresters across the city in different organizations, including City of Cleveland. So for planting, that means focusing in low canopy areas, providing free or low cost trees, and identifying high priority planting sites. So routes to school, bus stops, high pedestrian avenues, things like that. Making sure that those planted trees live by watering trees after planting, pruning trees regularly, mulching and weeding those young trees. And then when trees are middle-aged and mature, they still need maintenance. We can inoculate them against diseases and protect them so that we don't lose them. So again, remember, we're getting the majority of our benefits from mature, large trees, not small trees. And then preservation. We really need to start protecting our trees from development in Cleveland. I would love to see a no net loss policy. They have worked in other cities where if a tree comes down, a tree is planted. So be it in the tree lawn or be it on private property, we really need to see some stronger protection from city legislation to see trees remain so that we can keep those big old trees. They are providing the bulk of our benefits. And this also means talking to people in low canopy areas about the importance of trees. It is very easy to see the benefit of trees when you live somewhere where you have trees and where you notice the impact of trees. It is also very understandable to talk to homeowners and have them express fear of trees. Trees are a huge financial responsibility. Trees that are badly maintained, especially, are a safety liability and a financial liability. And it is completely understandable and necessary to validate those fears and to address hazardous and unsafe dead trees, especially in high priority planting areas, so that we're not only just planting new trees and ignoring our past problems, but we're addressing our past problems, we are validating people's concerns, and we are moving ahead with replacing hazardous trees with the right tree in the right place. So out of those three, planting, maintenance, or preservation, what are your personal thoughts on what you think is the most important to growing canopy? Or what you would want to see more of in Cleveland? Yeah, so we had 2 votes for maintenance and 1 vote for preservation. I think I go back and forth between maintenance and preservation every day. It's harder to replace butchered street trees. Yes, it is also, I think, extremely important for us to work through the backlog of maintenance work so that we're addressing hazardous trees and we're keeping trees that are healthy now in a condition where they're still going to be healthy in 20 or 30 years. So we'll talk about tree planting and just go through some success stories and some opportunities for all of those tactics. So I'm going to highlight Slavic Village. So targeted reforestation work in Slavic Village over the last 10 years has been made possible by some generous community funders and private businesses who have a home in the neighborhood, a supportive and dedicated community development corporation, Slavic Village Development, and a cooperative council person, Tony Brancatelli. So having all 3 of those meant that it was not a big lift to concentrate efforts in Slavic Village. There have been community events like a 2019 citywide or a city-sponsored Arbor Day block party at the A.B. Hart School, where trees were both planted on the school property and on several vacant lots immediately surrounding the school. That was also paired with a tree giveaway. And a Reforest Slavic Village event last fall at the Willow School that was also paired with a giveaway, and the Boys and Girls Club that hosts a Reforest Slavic Village event each year. Our Slavic Village event was on hold this year because of COVID, but hopefully we'll be back next year. Oh, you guys were at the Global Shapers Arbor Day event? Awesome. I heard it was really fun. And I moved back to Cleveland last fall, so I wasn't there. But we are hopefully going to try to keep replicating that block party model when it is safe to have large events like that again. Slavic Village also has flexible planting locations. There are plenty of vacant lots that we work with the city and county land bank to plant on. There are existing and new city parks. So Arch Park is an example. There's a nature preserve, Morgana Bluffs, which is behind a Boys and Girls Club. It's beautiful. We will hopefully be planting there this spring, as well as private property in residential yards. And we have also been able to continue to engage folks in Slavic Village by hosting tree stewards trainings. We will be hosting pruning workshops at established sites and engaging some of the youth who participate in the Boys and Girls Club programming. So all of this work is paying off. In the county update in 2019, Slavic Village was one of only 3 Cleveland neighborhoods to gain tree canopy. So what this shows us is that it is important to concentrate our work, especially for the Land Conservancy. We don't have the staff or the capacity to be planting in every single neighborhood to the fullest capacity. It is in our interest to target our efforts to have a lasting presence and to build lasting relationships in neighborhoods so that when we move on to a new target neighborhood, there are folks in Slavic Village who know how to care for trees and who are looking for space to plant trees and who have been through the process. So now to highlight a maintenance success, West 50th Street between Bridge and Franklin is a really incredible success story of middle-aged trees that were maintained to be preserved instead of being removed. So there is an invasive insect called the emerald ash borer. It attacks ash trees and kills them the vast majority of the time. So in the early 2000s, the generally accepted management strategy was to just remove ash trees before they got infested. And that was the city of Cleveland's policy as well. So neighbors lobbied for 3 years to be able to keep the trees. It was neighbors who did the research on treatments, which were at the time experimental, but now pretty widespread in the industry. And it was neighbors who pressured council and public works to be allowed to try out the arbor jet treatment and see if it worked, agreeing to remove the trees if it didn't work, but wanting to see if it would first. There were neighbors who bought their homes on this street because of the trees. It is a complete canopy down the street. And it worked. So today the trees are still standing. It has been 10 years since they were injected. ArborJet is now a pretty accepted treatment strategy for emerald ash borer to keep large ash trees, which provide really good canopy cover, beautiful fall color, and do well in spaces like tree lawns. So keeping these trees, although it was expensive to inject them and to treat them, was a fraction of the cost of figuring out a way to replace the environmental services and energy savings that these trees provide had they been removed. And then so an opportunity for preservation, I think, lies in Cleveland's tree code. So city council, the city forester, and citizens of Cleveland have been working to push for stronger protections for trees for a while. A recent, in the last couple of years, change to the tree code now requires all development on lots bigger than 1 acre to submit a tree plan to city forestry, including a tree preservation plan, so highlighting which trees on the lot will be preserved. This is a good step forward in that it codifies some preservation. However, the average city lot is only 1/5 of an acre. So this doesn't apply to very many lots. And there's also some confusion on if a developer is going to develop 4 parcels. So a parcel is that individual like house-sized tax lot. If there are 4 or 5 parcels that are adjacent to each other and together they make up 1 acre, but legally it's not technically 1 lot, it's 4 or 5 lots. Does the tree code still apply? There's a lot of gray area there. I don't know if anybody is comfortable saying it does or it doesn't. But as it stands, the way the law is written is just parcels bigger than 1 acre, and that leaves a lot of spaces out. So the biggest opportunity that we have to preserve trees and prevent them from being lost in neighborhoods that are facing development pressure is for City Council of Cleveland to adopt a tree commission, which is a community oversight board, and a stronger tree code that would protect trees of a certain size from being cut down or require fees that would be used to replace trees in high priority neighborhoods, tying back into that no net loss policy, as well as levy fines against people who remove trees illegally. And then some things that people can do. Private property tree planting is a huge opportunity for Cleveland to grow tree canopy. It's a way for homeowners to play an active role in making their city healthier and more livable. They can improve their energy efficiency, raise the curb appeal of their home, and also a lot of people like it because they can customize how their garden looks. With the tree lawn trees, you often don't get to choose. The city will choose for you. But the big bonus to planting a yard tree is there's no municipal red tape. So private property owners can do whatever they want on their private property, which means they don't need to get a permit. They can plant as many trees as they want without the wait time of going through that permitting process. Tree giveaways that neighborhoods and nonprofits host are a way to engage with neighbors and plant trees at a very low cost. Neighbors can pick their trees and pick it up from a community location and plant them in yards. Currently, we are hosting these for City of Cleveland residents only, with providing planting instructions and aid if need be. With the street trees that we're planting, they require city permitting and city participation. I do think that they are essential to the urban forest. We, as Western Reserve, do not plant them often because of the red tape and the expense. You have to plant much larger trees in the strip than you could for a vacant lot planting. Much larger at time of planting, not necessarily at time of maturity, but we do some street tree planting. And vacant parcel trees. So Cleveland has an abundance of vacant land. Most of it's being held through city and county land banks. These are a really huge opportunity for planting large trees that will cast a lot of shade and provide really good canopy cover, especially in underserved neighborhoods. So we see a lot of vacant land in neighborhoods that don't get as the benefit of city services the way more fully occupied neighborhoods do. And planting trees and creating like a park feel can really change the feeling and the character of a street, as well as just providing the canopy coverage that we need. So if you want to go out and plant a tree, here's just a quick diagram on what we do to make sure we're planting correctly. Ignore where it says cut burlap and rope away from top third of root ball. We take out all of our burlap and anything that is not part of the tree. We are mulching all of our trees at time of planting to put nutrients back into the soil. We're staking our trees to keep them safe from lawnmowers, and we're planting them at the right depth. So your freshly planted tree should look something like this. And then just how can you get involved in community forestry? I see community forestry as something that everybody can do. It can be as easy as talking to your neighbors about planting a tree, calling your elected officials, whether you are in City of Cleveland or another municipality, and telling them that you care about trees and you want to see better protection for trees in your neighborhood, whether that's better protection from utility pruning, better protection from being lost to development, more trees in your tree lawn. Calling your council person will just help them know that people are thinking about trees and care about trees and want to see more tree related things going on. You can also look for spaces in your neighborhood that could use trees. A lot of how our work is done is people come to us with an idea of where to plant trees. Neighbors are really the best advocate. I would say that the people who live next to a park that doesn't have very many trees know what they want to see out of where they live and know the capacity that they have to take care of trees. So it can be as easy as just talking to your neighbor and saying, hey, how do you feel about getting some trees in that park? And then reaching out to either the city or a nonprofit organization to see if they are able to help.